Hey guys, welcome back to Coach Hall Writes. In a recent video, I asked you guys what you wanted help with in preparation for the AP Lang exam, and one of the things that people wanted was help with topic sentences. And this is something that I have done in my own classroom, so I thought I would give you guys an inside look at some of the sentence frames I use with my students for rhetorical analysis. So first we need to talk about the types of sentences we want to avoid. So for rhetorical analysis, you want to try to avoid sentences that say something like, "One choice the author uses is," simply because these sentences are rather simple. It's not just passive voice, but also it's not a very sophisticated syntax. So we want to try to avoid that. So let me show you what you can use instead. One thing to keep in mind is that we want to analyze a passage relatively chronologically because we want to follow the author's line of reasoning in order to create a line of reasoning in our essay as well. So here I've written it as if this was a speech. I said speaker instead of author, but you would use the speaker's last name here. All of these sentence frames are easily adaptable depending on the text that you're using. The key word here is commences, so that means begins. So this tells your reader that you're talking about something that happens at the beginning of the passage that you're analyzing. So this can be easily adapted, like I said, but the key here is to examine the author's argument. So here's an example. This is from Florence Kelly's speech. So it says, Florence Kelly commences her speech about the evils of child labor. So you want to clue your reader in on the actual argument that your speaker is making. And then it says, by providing startling facts. So notice that I didn't say by using logos. I was much more specific than that. And then if you keep reading, we have actual evidence from the passage. So you can start to incorporate quotes, even if it is your topic sentence. It's okay to have evidence in your topic sentence. And so this would be a way to lead into a paragraph. This is giving a bit of context as you start to dive into your main point. Once you've written your topic sentence, then you need to figure out how to expand upon that. And so one thing to keep in mind is the rhetorical situation, which is basically considering the audience and the occasion. So if you're familiar with Soapstone or Space Cat, those are two acronyms that can be very helpful when you are analyzing a passage. So you'll see in this slide, I took the exact same sentence that we used before, and instead I added on more to it, this time in yellow, so you can see the new addition. So we're still using some evidence from the passage. We've got the words we and country as our textual evidence, but we've also got an appeal to patriotism mentioned, and we're talking about how Florence Kelly is uniting herself with her audience. So we're analyzing her purpose here, why she's using those words and what the effect of that is. And so you need to expand upon your topic sentence with evidence and commentary. So we need to make a claim, and then we need to actually analyze the significance of that claim. So that's the purpose of that yellow sentence here. One of the things to keep in mind about sentence frames is that they are rather versatile. So this next sentence frame could be used if you are continuing that same paragraph, or you could actually use it as the topic sentence of a second body paragraph. So I'm going to show you how to use it if we're continuing that same paragraph, but again, you could use it as a topic sentence if you wanted to. Another thing to keep in mind is that with these sentence frames, you can actually use synonyms sometimes for certain words, and you can also add additional adverbs and things to make it fit the point that you're trying to make. So you might notice that I changed a little bit of the wording here and there sometimes to just make it more appropriate for the paragraph that it was in. That's totally fine. A sentence frame is just a model. So you'll see here that the yellow portion is the new portion. So it says, having established her position against unjust child labor. So that might seem a little bit redundant, but we want to be very clear that we understand what she's actually talking about. We want to be very clear that we know her subject. Kelly furthers her argument by citing examples. Okay, so that's a strategy. It's called exemplification. And so then we talk about the different examples that she gives. She references multiple states. And then the analysis comes when we talk about why she's actually referencing those states. So remember, we have to identify a choice that she makes. We have to provide evidence of that choice, either a direct quote or a paraphrase. And then we need to give analysis. We need to explain why she does it. And that pertains to the rhetorical situation. So you can see that the stuff I added is all in yellow here. In looking at hundreds of essays from my own students over the years and also students from other schools, it's become very clear that students tend to forget to analyze the significance of the choice in relation to the audience and the occasion. And so this next sentence frame is a way to try to remember to include that. And so basically what you need to do is figure out why that particular message or argument is poignant, so why it's important for that particular audience. Because you need to remember that speakers or writers tailor their message to their audience. They make those choices for a reason, so they need to make sure that it's having an impact. So why is that choice effective for that audience? So as with the previous examples, I'm going to include the new sentence frame at the bottom here in yellow. This one says, given that she is speaking to suffragists at a convention. So basically, we have a reference to her audience. Her audience is composed of suffragists, which are basically people who wanted women to have the right to vote. So she is a woman speaking to women. This was in 1905 at a convention for suffragists. So women didn't gain the right to vote until 1920. So they have a particular reason for gathering, and they have a particular common goal, common belief. And so she needs to tailor her message to these women. So she needs to make them understand that even though she's talking about child labor and why it's unjust, that this message matters to them because she ultimately wants to have them act upon it. And if they're going to pay attention to her call to action, they need to actually believe her line of reasoning. So that's how you connect the audience and occasion. But now let's talk about what you do if you want to lead into another paragraph. These are some sentence frames you can use, and these are different examples of how they could phrase the prompt. So it could be an argument, a message, or a purpose. So you would just vary your wording depending on what the prompt is. And it says verb ing because you would put whatever verb you need there and then make it the ing form of the verb, in case that's a little confusing. My students are used to that, but not everybody else is, so I figured I would clarify that for you guys. Now, I know we've already mentioned audience and occasion, but that is incredibly important if you are trying to score a 3 or a 4 in evidence and commentary on the new rhetorical analysis rubric for AP Lang. And so I want to show you guys a couple more sentence frames that can help you achieve this, because it's not something that you do just one time in your essay and then you're done with it. You need to do this consistently throughout your essay. And so this next sentence frame is a way that you can lead into a final body paragraph. So particularly talking about a call to action. So it says given, and then whoever the speaker is, given their goal to, and then you say what their goal is, she concludes her speech by imploring the audience to. So imploring means that they're like asking them to do something very strongly. So what is the call to action? So I'm going to give you guys an example of this with the same exact speech that we're talking about here, which is the Florence Kelley speech. So given Florence Kelley's goal to end the harsh labor conditions child laborers experience, she concludes her speech by imploring her audience to join with the men who can vote in order to seek justice. And then we talk about two different things: what happens if they do, and what happens if they don't. So we're looking at both scenarios here. If they listen to her call to action, what are the benefits? And then if they don't, what is going to happen? So we're analyzing the different outcomes of the situation. So this is important, and this can be used in a variety of ways if there's a call to action. Typically speaking, in a piece of rhetorical analysis, there's going to be a call to action. In this particular piece, it was very explicit, which means that it was very obvious. However, sometimes it's more implied, so it's a little bit less obvious. But one thing I would look for if you're analyzing a piece is there a call to action? Usually it's at the end of the piece. I also want to point out that I embedded some evidence into my own sentences. So notice that I am taking Florence Kelley's words and weaving them into a sentence of my own rather than just dropping one of her quotes in there. That helps it read a lot better. So that's called embedded evidence. You want to make sure that you are using shorter quotes that you can work into your own sentence instead of just dropping a quote in there. It makes your essay a whole lot easier to read, and it really helps the flow. Okay, now let's talk about conclusions. So I'm going to give you guys two sentence frames that you can use to lead into a conclusion. And these are actually two that you can kind of mix and match the word choice for rather easily. So basically the idea here would be to restate your thesis in a way that's not word for word, and also without leading into it by saying in conclusion. So I like these sentence frames as a way for students to kind of wrap up their thoughts, but I want to also point out that sometimes students run out of time. And so you can actually use these as a way to wrap up your essay, even if you don't feel like you have enough time to really fully develop a conclusion paragraph. So I'm going to show you guys what this would look like with the Florence Kelley prompt so you can see it in action. But the idea is to just sort of wrap up the main points of your essay, reiterating the choices that you analyzed and also examining the significance of those choices in terms of the rhetorical situation. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found these sentence frames useful. These are sentence frames that I give my own students, and it has really transformed the way they write. As they become more comfortable with them, they tend to adapt them to their own style. If you guys want more resources, don't forget to check the description box below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn those notifications on. And until next time, guys, happy writing.